maybe here we're in Wintrust Gold Coast. You can't really see it, but it says Wintrust Gold Coast. Maybe they can have the golden crosswalks. They have the red ones in Chinatown. Maybe they can have the golden crosswalks. Something signifying the Gold Coast. You know, Russian state, they meet. That's the tip of the triangle of the Gold Coast. The back end is oak. So it's a small triangle, but it's really much bigger. The Magnificent Mile is down to the right, down Oak Street. It gets you out at the beginning of the Magnificent Mile. The beginning of the Mag Mile is Oak in Michigan, going southbound, not northbound. And so Oak in Michigan is the start of the Magnificent Mile. And the Magnificent Mile meets the Gold Coast. And they're intertwined. So the Gold Coast Association meets the Magnificent Mile Association. And there's a pizza place down here, Paisano's. Now, there was one on Division 2, and I like Paisano's. Now, they give a fair thing. Costa, I told him to take his mother there, and he didn't like the pizza as much. But he's not really a pizza guy. So I discount, his... Yes, for him, he doesn't eat pizza. We go out to eat all the time. He never eats pizza. Truly, I've never seen him actually eat pizza. Ever. I've been over to the house, hanging out, many parties, going out, and he's never eaten pizza. He goes in and has his, European beers, which he likes because they have non-GMO. They use non-GMO in the brewing process, so he doesn't drink any beer with any GMO products, genetically modified. He eats his dark chocolate, which is bitter. And he likes his sausage, and he likes his crepes and many other things. He doesn't eat pizza ever, but he didn't say his mother didn't like it. He said he didn't like it. So you got to take into account when people come in, these aren't your regular clients. And that's why I bring it up. And if he doesn't like it, don't worry. He's not coming back. You're not going to change things to win him over. You want to keep your client base and deepen it with them. And then you want to add on to people that are similar to them, that are part of the pizza lovers or have never experienced pizza, like Miss Park in North Korea. But Jimmy, he's Korean, and he became a big pizza lover. And who else? Pastor John at NCPC and his wife. They're a great husband and wife couple. Truly good people. I like them both. They're awesome people. But he was a regular at Jimmy's Pizza. He lived up there by Jimmy's, and he used to go and eat Jimmy's Pizza all the time. And John is a big pizza guy. And so is his wife. And I imagine so is his kids, because if the husband and wife are eating it and they have multiple kids, they're pizza people as Korean people. So that's how you want to go deeper. So like Miss Park, she has no exposure. So I don't know. In North Korea, they don't have any pizza places. So I don't know. You can make something with kimchi and make it a Korean-oriented pizza. Like they came out at Taco Bell with the flat tortilla that is solid and a tostada. But they had called it a Mexican pizza instead of a tostada. And it had that firm shell, and when you bite in, yeah, it crumbles really quick. So it's a little difficulty. You need to add in some flexibility in the chip. So when you bite it, yes, it snaps off, but you don't want it to be brittle. So you don't want it to snap as quick. So it's not, you're going to bite into it and it's going to snap, but not as rapidly. And that way, the rest of it doesn't crumble and you can take bites and eat it on the flat tortilla, but you have to redesign it right. And this is where I used to work. And now it's Gino's East and right next door. And I love Gino's Stuffed Pizza, and I almost became a delivery driver for one of their stores. And they do all the pizzas pre-ahead. The stuffed pizzas in that are all pre-made. Now, you can get a specialty pizza, meaning customized, but it'll take longer. Most people take it off the shelf, just like going to the grocery store. Now, if you wanted to do something at the grocery store, what they could have done at Whole Foods is giving you pizzas that are custom made to take home and put in the fridge. Yeah, buying a pizza to go, okay, but giving you, like, I want 5 pizzas for the fridge. Like Giordano's, they have the frozen pizzas and they ship them all over the place. And the funny thing is, a lot of Giordano's business that goes nationally, I don't know about international, but it goes nationally, they ship to college students. Particularly where from? Chicago. Care packages out coming from Chicago. In the care packages, I did a little research. In the care packages, they send them a frozen Giordano's pizza. Now you have to pack it correctly, but they send them one to their college so they can get a little taste of home. Now, if they open up in stores out there, you know, then they get a little bite in the store they can go to, but still sending them a care package doesn't go away because they didn't have to go to the store, and you want to send them a little taste of home. So that's why I put the MASH episode when they came to Chicago to get the Italian beef. And then they had it flown all the way to Korea. And that was a great episode. They came to Chicago, you know, paid somebody to come to Chicago. They get it from a famous Italian beef place in Chicago. I don't know if it exists. I haven't watched the episode, but that was a great episode. And then they got it all the way to them. Where? In Korea. Think about 80 countries, 750 military bases. I used to go up and do care packages for the military. I never told Jimmy or anyone else, but the Marine thing on Foster, I used to look down. They have a checklist of what they wanted, and then I would pick stuff off the checklist because you had to pick from the list they gave you. You couldn't just send them random stuff. They decided by discussing to the troops what they wanted. So it wasn't for marketing purposes. It was so you can fill their desires, their, you know, homesickness. So giving you a few things from home. And so I used to do that. That's in my first breakdown. I used to do it. My sister never. People don't. The stuff I do. But anyways, I would put it together and then take it, and they did it around the holidays, and they send the care package to the military base, just giving them a little things from home, you know, and it's on Foster Avenue, and they put up the list. So, you know, again, that's U.S. military. How about the Canadian military? Or how about the U.S. embassies around the world? Or how about the Canadian embassies and consulates around the world? Send them a little taste of Canada, like Canadian bacon. Maybe the Egg McMuffin, and I'll look it up, with Canadian bacon might sell very well in Canada. Truly, I would assume that the Canadian muffin Now it's on English bagels, but again, Canada was part of the British colony as well. So they have a big British history, and that's where, Canada, Australia, and so on with Jack, and they have the British history like we have the British history, where the British is the number one group of, bloodline in the United States. They have the largest demographic, and then the second largest is German. Now, it's mixed heritages, but number one is British heritage, number two is German heritage in the United States. Those are the two biggest heritage groups. And that's who built the United States. Einstein was a German. Lots of German and British heritage. Unbelievable. That's what built all the educational institutions. If you don't know that, it's true. All the educational institutions were built by, they said, WASP, per se. But these Anglo-Saxon, individuals and Protestant work ethic in America. So it was Saxons and Protestants and all that. They got along here where they didn't get along over there. We didn't have that same Protestant Saxon hate. Truly, they got along over here, but they didn't get along over there. Because you're living in it, the deep-seated history of it. And so the one thing about history books, they're great in one way, but they constantly open up a scab in another way. And when you're living in it, and I told you with my Arab friends, with Jews, when they go back home, and like my Serbian friends with Croats, when they go back home, that they don't hang out. There's more crossover here. Like the Jewish and Arabs at the University of Arizona, there's no problem. But both sides, when they say, I go back to Israel, we go back to the heritage. When I go back to Serbia or go back to the Croats, as my friend Ali said, when I go back to Qatar and so on, I align. And the history books teach you, and all those people understand the history. One thing about America, it's only a few hundred years old. And so a lot of people need to check their past at the door for it to work. That's why they called it the Great Melting Pot. But the thing that the history books do is they stoke flames. And so you have to understand this, like the tailgaters on my ass. Instead, the lane's open right around there, but I would put them in jail immediately and then have them beaten. They're giving me psychological trauma, which amplifies throughout my body, causing me great pain. My shoulder tightens up. Other things tighten up from the psychological trauma of their tailgating. And it's causing me immense trauma. So I want them to feel the pain since they don't feel it. That's why I like Singapore, where they beat them. This way, the message is delivered effectively. That you don't have to worry. They now get the understanding of the pain. And this is what I realized. And I was blue in the face sometimes with people, and they didn't get it until I beat the shit out of them. And it wasn't that they were humbled because they were beaten. I had many discussions. They were humbled because I understand the suffering. I understand the pain. And why do you think in the movie where he has split personalities and the girl, and she cut herself, and then he shows him the cuts, and he says to her, you've evolved. You understand my suffering. And so what does he do? He lets her live. He doesn't kill her. But the point is the truth. That statement, I know for a fact, is the God's honest truth. You understand. It's like the serial killer who left the girl and didn't kill her. And she said she focused on giving the best oral sex she ever did in life. But the point was focusing on his desire. And she understood. And this, if she doesn't do it right, this might be the last oral sex she ever gives. She told the FBI questioners, the detectives from the FBI, that. It's in the story. You can read it. But he had like 50 girls and barrels. And what did they do? They didn't understand. If they would have, he would have let many of them go. But the ones, most of all of them, didn't understand. She understood. And she said, I thought he was going to kill me. And it was either focus on this, forget about the fear or anything else, and give the best oral sex I've ever given. And she said that was the best oral sex. I focused and I gave him incredible oral sex. And he was so happy he let me go because he was the only girl he never killed. The rest of them screamed and everything else. And yes, he fed into that. But his true desire was incredible sexual pleasure. Under that, it was this lack of getting what he wanted sexually. And she did the right thing and she lived. The rest of them, they didn't understand the situation. And when you get into these situations and you don't understand the situation, you make yourself very vulnerable if you can't unearth what the true desires are. Remember Jerry Bruckheimer with Lucifer, the TV show? What is his number one thing? He goes in and he knows people's true desires. And when he unearths their true desire, he can get them what they want to turn them. And so he understands your true desire. But that comes from the Bible. Lucifer knows. And that's why the Bible tells you you have to be very discerning. And you have to do things righteously and justly. Because even if you want it, doesn't mean you should receive it. And so people that rape and do other things. And just like the serial killer, even if he wanted it, he wasn't doing it correctly. He wasn't willing to do the refinement, work on his physical capabilities. And this is why when I see a woman and she says, I should have a man, and I look at her and I'm like, at Starbucks, I'll just give the girl, you're incredibly heavy. You're not willing to do the work, but you have these desires. And you're not willing to put in the work. You're not willing to put in the effort. You're not willing to lose the weight. You're not willing to take care of your physicalities. You're not willing to do the things. Jen, she steamed her face, took care of her acne, took care of the little bit on her lips. That little, very little. I mean, it was incredibly subtle, but even a little was too much for me. But she was willing to do the work. And I was willing to do the work on the other side. And we were both willing to do the work. And this is what my sister told Michael Geringer. When you get into a relationship, eventually it's going to come down to working at the relationship. And if you're not willing to do the work, then the relationship fails because you went through that lust period that you're new. It's like having the new car. And it is the new car experience. And you're all thrilled and everything else. But what happens? You've been there. You've done it. because the other person is not willing to work at the relationship, not willing to improve their sexuality, not willing to work on themselves in the bedroom. Jen said she was horrible at oral sex and she needed to improve. She constantly worked on improving. She understood that I have some shortcomings in the bedroom and I'll work on them. And then we'll work on other things to spice it up. But couples, that's why they cheat. Especially men, because it's not satisfying. Just orgasming isn't good enough eventually. That's just going through the motion. But getting something else outside the relationship that you don't have, well, that's really spice. It's like True Lies with Arnold, and his wife is going to cheat on him because she doesn't get the emotional spice. See, the man wants the physical in the bedroom, and they show that in Billions. And that Asian girl is beautiful that plays the dominatrix girl. But besides that, it is correct in that way and doing things so his wife understands this as a psychologist, that she needs to do certain things to make the sex life in the bedroom spicy. And he needs to do certain things emotionally, like being honest with her, like his wife leaves him because he lied the first time, and the writers did it right, and she left. Now getting over it, can she ever trust him again? Because it's the first time he lied, but will it be the last time? Because will she ever allow herself to be in a situation again that he has the potential to lie to her? So that's the question. That goes into the emotional. Men, they're not into the lying, doesn't mean as much in that, they take it as white lies and, they pass it off a little bit. That's okay. You bought the shoes. You didn't tell me. But to the women, it goes into the emotional, and they feel much more betrayed. So it's not the sex that the women are worried about when it comes with the cheating. It is that you betrayed my trust. It is the emotional. And they break down. It's not the physical. It's not that you have sex with the other person, the other girl. Is that you betrayed my trust. I made myself vulnerable to you. Women get penetrated. Men don't. And men don't understand the vulnerability. And so women have much more emotional. And so cheating is more of an emotional thing than it is a physical thing with women. But with men, it's more of a physical thing than an emotional thing. And they don't understand each other. And so if you're not willing to do these things, and at least my sister said it right to Mike, that the work begins. And what does he do? And as my sister said, you always dump him because it gets to that point and you cut him loose. But if the girls know this, then they would teach him by not getting into the relationship, giving him his, pleasures in the bedroom so easily. And in turn, he would commit more to the emotional, because to get what he wanted, he wants the bedroom, but I need more of a commitment that you're not going to get into this and dump me. But these are what Playboy is supposed to be writing about. And whether they buy dating sites or they get as content on dating sites, because the intimate massages for couples and all the dating stuff can be spread through Coffee Meets Bagel and Match and Christian Mingles and so if they don't buy them, then they can position their literature and other products on their sites. So maybe they don't get into developing the dating sites. or acquiring them, they become what Google did, the operating system. And so it goes to Samsung, LG, and all these phone companies. That's what did they find? Google found a niche market that they didn't have at Microsoft. Like Bing wasn't a good search engine. Google found an excellent search engine. And then they found another Microsoft weakness. They weren't into the cell market. They didn't have an operating platform that worked effectively on cell phones. So what did Google do? They allowed open source to these phone companies, from LG to Samsung to many others, the Google operating system. So they went into the phones. Microsoft stayed in the computers and tablets. Google still has a hard time competing on tablets and laptops and desktops, but they dominate with Apple, the cell market, and Microsoft had, what's the Swedish company, whatever, and they tried, but they failed. Their whole thing is getting in an operating system, and Apple and Google are not going to give them an edge to get into an operating. Google has the Chinese companies as well, the phone companies. Their operating systems on all those different Asian phone companies. Truly, I don't know of any Latin Americans, but the whole thing is they dominate on that platform. Now, Apple only does its own phones, and it dominates purely through Apple sales. To get the operating system, you got to buy the phone. It's a bundled system. And I'm not saying that it is wrong. Apple decided to go with a bundle package. Their operating system is incredibly intuitive. I was on it before through AT&T, and I very liked it. It was I would say it was easier to use than Google. It was more intuitive than Google. Truly, it was much more user interface friendly, much more intuitive than Google. Google can be a little bit of a struggle, and that's Microsoft's problem as well, that their software isn't user friendly to a point. And so you get Google Docs, who found a little bit of edge over Microsoft. How? By making the Docs more user friendly. Now, Apple has allowed its Siri browser to be put on Google phones with their operating system, and you can get the Siri's browser. You can get the iTunes and some components on non-Apple phones. Those things aren't exclusive. So, Apple, you flourish that market then. You keep the bundle that keeps you separate, the operating system and that, and then you work on your satellites and you use them to get on other systems. Like Google used to be the search engine for Apple Maps. Not for their search. Siri's, no, it wasn't Google. Now, Bing was the search guts for Yahoo. Yahoo used Bing. It was a Yahoo browser, but the guts was from Microsoft. It was its Bing platform. So, again, that they source out. Now, Google sourced out its mapping platform to Apple. Now, Apple wanted to get Google off, but why waste the money? Google has a wholly owned subsidiary at China Wall, and the product they give to Apple competes against their own product. So Apple just keeps on refining it, working with the Google team, and that doesn't show up because that would be a conflict of interest. Like ADP works with Fifth Third and worked with Chase, and they broke the China Wall and created a conflict of interest, and they were lucky that Fifth Third didn't sue Chase and ADP hugely, because they were giving them proprietary information from the Fifth Third team, was giving it over to Chase to beat them on commercial loans. And Chase was stealing commercial business from Fifth Third Bank. And Fifth Third found out. Now, they didn't sue them, but ADP said they guarantee the China wall would never be violated again. If you keep us, our services will be provided to you, and we will never violate that trust again. And so Fifth Third said, okay, don't ever give our internal information ever again to Chase. And they didn't give it from Chase to to Fifth Third. Fifth Third was getting crushed in the commercial real estate, the commercial lending market, because Chase knew the internal structure of what they were doing and what capacities they had, what interest rates, how they were doing their risk parameters and that. And the Chase teams were doing this illegally, unethically. What did Jamie Dimons do about that? And I wonder if he knew, because that was highly illegal. And Fifth Third is a regional bank, and they took it on the chin, unbelievably. So, again, these are things that prosecutors could process. This is a criminal offense, and ADP did a criminal thing, and also the Chase commercial bankers were involved, and they knew where the information was coming, and they knew it was illegal, and they were co-conspirators, and they could have been charged criminally and went to jail, and Fifth Third could have sued Chase civilly, because it should have never happened. And this giant was crushing this regional by stealing proprietary information about their lending capabilities internally. It wasn't something they sourced out on the web or anything. That was all public fairness. They stole internal that wasn't made public. And they had a competitive edge at every meeting, and they knew exactly what Fifth Third was going to propose. And they beat them on the deals, and they were gobbling them up. But the reason that it came to this, Fifth Third did an internal inquiry. They were trying to figure out how the hell were they losing too many. And so statistical analysis found out they should have been winning a certain percentage from Chase when they went head-to-head, but they were losing overwhelmingly majority, and that shouldn't have happened. And that's where statistic analysis comes up, and that's how Fifth Third found it through their internal, saying the numbers don't add up. We should have won more deals, and some reason we're way, way, way down. And they did it and found out that ADP was violating and giving Chase proprietary information, destroying their competitive advantage or their competitive capabilities. They might not have had an advantage, but their whatever competitive capabilities they had was destroyed. But they did it through analysis that they should have won a certain percentage. But how many prosecutors do that? Like trading scenarios on short squeezes and everything else. Again, it shows how often they should win. And when you find an anomaly, it doesn't mean they're guilty, but it definitely should be looked at in more detail. Why are they doing something that they never did before? Why are they richer than before? And I looked at it as with presidents like the Clintons, Obamas, and many others. Why do they have blank amount going into the presidency and then blank amount coming out of the presidency? And why are they so much richer? Because did they have a blind trust? Because how did they end up becoming richer on their salaries? Because they weren't doing book deals, they weren't doing this, because a lot of that's prohibited. That's why only after they leave can they get the book deals. And again, that's so they can't front one when they're passing bills and that. And like in Billions, the prosecutor has it in a blind trust. And the whole point is so they don't know where they stand, so they can't make deals in their best benefit, trying to eliminate their bias when they make decisions. Their bias when they make decisions. So I watch and I'm wondering how the Obamas came out richer. Now, did Michelle get more business? Remember, Trump said that you couldn't solicit the federal government for 5 years after you serve for the federal government. He mandated that when the BP came head of the State Department, that he couldn't directly solicit in any way, shape, or form the government for 5 years, a 5-year moratorium. That way they were in it for the government in 5 years, another election, right? When they get out, there could be another whole administration in, and so on and so forth. At least there would be change. They would be further. There's internal change in positions and so on. People move up or move vertical in the food chain. So the connections are weakened. Their ability to solicit business is weakened. And that's the whole point, getting it in for the public. They're looking to open a stadium here, soccer stadium. Okay. And then this real estate could go up, but it could go down. Why could it go down? Traffic and noise. It's really quiet with all these. But what does the stadium have to do? All these buildings, just like the airport, they have to go and pay for all these buildings to be soundproofed. And they have to figure out how they're going to control the noise coming out of the stadium. But all these buildings would have to be modified at the cost of the builders of the stadium. Modifying the windows from single pane to double, or double to triple pane, truly. And doing soundproofing, like putting foam insulation in the walls. Because with increased traffic is also vibration. They have to shore up the foundations as well. Oh yeah, because the foundations can get cracks because this street would get an incredible amount of traffic. And they would be privy to all that traffic. And so they would have to do all kinds of things. Now here, they would have to improve. There's the Metro. They could put a Metro stop here. They put in a new ballpark. Why not put a Metro stop there? Now, I don't know how close it is from the other stop. But again, you could put a Metro stop right there. And then you got the Metro stop. And then you have to figure out where you're going to put a bus terminal. Because every stadium should have a transit terminal. Now, on Roosevelt, you have the trains. You don't have to move them. But a bus terminal would be appropriate with the stadium. And that bus terminal allows for taxi cabs, Uber, and rideshare, limos to pick up and drop off. So you must allow for all kinds of pick up and drop off, even family coming in to drop off their kids or drop off a spouse. And so you have to have a commuter pick up and drop off area for rideshare. That includes taxis and limos, but for a passenger drop-off of individual vehicles as well, besides the bus terminal. And then you would have to have Navy Pier trolley integrate into that too. Oh yeah, you want the new stadium, you want to put in the trolley loop. So it goes from Navy Pier into the bus terminal by the stadium and back to Navy Pier. And then the water taxi is up at Navy Pier. So you take the trolley from the new stadium to Navy Pier, and you get on the water taxi at Navy Pier. That's one way. Or the water taxi stop over here in Chinatown. That's behind me. So I'll show you where the water taxi stop. But the stadium is big business to Chinatown. But also these hotels over there. So you got the Marriott, the Marquis, and the McCormick Center and that. So those hotels need business that is non-driven by events. And so the stadium is a separate thing, and building the stadium over there where they never capture business as much from the Bears Stadium events, but they should. The Hyatt and the Hilton over here, the Hampton Inns, the Marriott. And so building the new soccer stadium can bring in business. And then the back road down here, you have Lawrence Fish Market and everything else. Then you can go into that. But also, you want to bring in European soccer. Not Hispanic fans. You got them. You want to bring in European travelers. People from Europe that come here, and maybe they come down for, some convention event at the convention center. But you want to bring in Europeans or Europeans in this country that live here, that work for different firms like Volkswagen and many others, because Germany has won the FIFA Cup many times. And Germany has a huge soccer following, and so does Great Britain. They have massive soccer following. So you want to bring that fans, the Caucasian fans, to mix in with your Latino fans. So no, you don't want to overwhelmingly rely on Latino fans. You could rely on 100% Caucasian fans if you tap into this market correctly. And Brazilians, they've won many times, and Portuguese are white and so on. So not necessarily is it a minority thing. I'm not saying exclude Latin, but I'm saying not necessarily, and you get a good cross-section of whites and Latinos, and that means you get diversification and you're more stable with the stadium. And so when Europeans come for, say, conventions at McCormick Center or that, then they can go ahead and do that. And China has soccer, and Japan has soccer, and so on. So again, you can play into the soccer crowd, the Asian soccer crowd, the European soccer crowd, the Latino soccer crowd, the African soccer crowd. So I'm down here, and this is the Leonard M. Louis Fieldhouse, but right here also on the backside is where they do the dragon boat races and that, but it's where they have the water taxi. So I don't know what they're doing up here on the other side of this. If they're going to extend the path, roadway or that, it might make sense to extend the roadway, even if that goes over water with a bridge. So again, it might make sense. But again, Chinatown will benefit greatly, and the Chinese play soccer. So again, and it's much more fitted to the Asian physicality than football. To be quite honest, it's much more fitted towards the Asian physicality. That's why they do martial arts and everything else. It's just much more fitted to the Asian physicality. And yes, martial arts like capoeira and that, Larry took the Brazilian martial arts and that, it much more fits to their, and it's an Olympic sport and everything else, and it much more fits to their, physicality. So, again, you can have martial arts tournaments there as well. You can host pre-Olympic martial arts tournaments. You have mixed martial arts, but I'm not talking mixed martial arts. I'm just talking Olympic, competition, like the World Cup martial arts tournaments and the pre-Olympic martial arts tournaments, and they can bring them into the soccer stadium as well. That would be something that no one else is doing. And Bruce Lee, you get Chuck Norris and Bruce Lee. Well, he's not around, but his wife is, and his daughter is. The husband and the son are dead, both been shot, I think. Both were shot. I know Brandon Lee for a fact. I forgot how Bruce died. I thought it was but anyways, so both the wife and the daughter are still alive. Not because they had outlived them, because they had physical anything, that both of them were shot. I think. I got to look up Bruce. I forget how Bruce died. But again, it wasn't because of that. It was because of these things that should have never happened. It was very sad when Brandon died. I was very upset. I was looking forward to him he took the acting and he mixed it with his foundation, which he learned from his father, martial arts. And I thought he was going to be the next film star. Truly. Like Jet Li and so on. I thought he was going to take over his father's heritage and be this amazing. And he shows his martial arts in The Crow, but only part of it is truly him. The other part was CGI, I think. But again, he shows initially his martial arts skills. So they put him into an action film, The Crow, because of his immense physical capabilities related to martial arts. So he makes a perfect action hero, but he did it better than his father. He would have been way better than his father. Truly, not as sharp on the martial arts. I don't think he would have outdone his father on martial arts. He would have been very good, but his father, incredible on the martial arts, a little lacking on the acting. Brandon Lee would have been heavy on the acting, a little bit lacking on the martial arts. But either way, phenomenal. And see this Target, new stadium, they get all kinds of new business. And this mall right here, which has suffered, this project suffered. It came in on new and these stores were vacant. If the stadium deal goes through, all these units in this building and that take off. And all these stores get an incredible amount of traffic. Truly, they can govern people coming in pre-game and after-game shopping. No one does that. You don't have to open up a mall. Here's a mall. Target's right there. And then you have, I'll show you on Canal, all those stores there. So they can talk about coming in early or staying after the game and experiencing the restaurant and shopping in the community, and they can sell that with the game experience. They don't do that. Like the casinos, now there's a thing showing the Vegas experience, but the casinos, even when I book, they don't feature their malls. Like Caesar Mall, they don't show it when you book a room, the experience in the mall and the shopping. But overall, they should be talking about the Vegas experience too. The Vegas nightlife, the Vegas shops, the Vegas thing. And this is what they should be doing with the new soccer stadium here. I'm just using that as Vegas doesn't have their stuff all together. Neither does Macau or any of them. So there's a lot of more upside as they fine-tune. If you learn excellence before God, things are good. They never stop getting better. It's just how much. You'll have evolution, which are small, goodness increases, and then